Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Agelocer Original 29.5 one-day moon phase. This watch is available from Kickstarter.com for 3,885 Hong Kong dollars, which is €476. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a watch box which is housed inside this outer cardboard box. I'll remove it and show it to you. So this is the watch box itself, plastic watch box which is vinyl coated with green vinyl and stitched with contrasting white stitching around the perimeter of the lid and also the base. Now I'm going to be critical of this because if you look at the lower right corner of the hinge lid, you can see the contrasting white stitching has frayed stitching. Agelocer Original could do better than this, and I would like to see them improve upon their quality control and also their finishing. The hinge lid is spring-loaded, it snaps shut with a nice positive click and opens with a nice positive spring-loaded action. The interior is fully upholstered with a contrasting grey velour fabric to a good standard in the underside of the hinge lid and also in the base. There's an elasticated strap in the underside of the hinge lid, and that secures the plastic warranty card, and in the base there are two elasticated straps which secure the watch down to the base to prevent it moving around when in transit. So good quality presentation, it's aesthetically pleasing, they just need to refine it and improve their quality control inspection procedures and also the finishing with the white stitching, because frayed stitching spoils it. So with regards to the items that come with the watch, this is the owner's instruction manual, clear concise diagrams, the instructions are in English and it details the operation of the movement use, which is the Agelocer Caliber A4610 automatic. This is the plastic warranty card that comes to the watch, and I'm pleased to report that the 29.5 one-day moon phase we're going to be looking at is covered by a 2-year international warranty. I want to give due credit to Agelocer Original here, because often low-tier Chinese brands only cover their watches with 12 months of warranty. 2 years of international warranty is very good. On the reverse of the plastic warranty card, it details the terms and conditions of the 2-year international warranty. This is the tag that comes to the watch, and as you can see it's branded with Agelocer Original's logo in silver. It's made from vinyl PU leather and the reverse is sterile. And lastly, one also gets this Agelocer Original branded microfiber polishing cloth, and if you look closely it's also embossed with repeated Agelocer Original emblems. So very aesthetically pleasing. I always think it's a nice touch to get a branded microfiber polishing cloth irrespective of the price point of a piece. So with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 40mm case diameter, we have a lug-to-lug measurement of 47mm, a thickness of 12.2mm and a lug width of 20mm. The genuine leather strap is suede on the top side and smooth leather on the contrasting underside, and it's also got a curved end because it uses curved spring bars rather than straight. So bamboo textured finish to it, and it has a matte finish to the suede and matching green stitching on the edges. It tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to the buckle and tang. Solid 316L grade stainless steel buckle and tang, mirror polished to the top side, underside and flanks, and the left hand top corner is engraved with high definition engraving of the Agelocer Original brand emblem. Nice heavy gauge to the 316L grade stainless steel, good quality mirror polishing to it, no sharp edges, no burrs, good quality buckle and tang, and I'm pleased I haven't used the cost cutting measure of a sterile buckle and tang, it's signed with the emblem. We have a double dome sapphire crystal with clear AL coating on the underside, and the clear anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the silver mirror polished applied indices, silver mirror polished rail track chapter ring, and also the silver mirror polished syringe handset. Now this is a two-hand piece. I think it would look better, and this is subjective, but I prefer three-hand watches if this had a second hand, because this does not have a second hand, so one cannot set the time precisely to the second. However, this is subjective. Some collectors like moon phase pieces like this to have a minimalist design and just have two hands, one for the hour hand, one for the minute hand, without a second hand, the second hand deleted. But I think a three-hand watch is more useful, more practical. Now, with regards to the double dome sapphire crystal, I like that it is very low profile. It's only 50 meters water resistant, but the benefit of that is it is thinner than a 100 meter water resistant sapphire crystal. Doesn't need to be as thick. This piece does use an exhibition caseback, which does add some thickness, but it is surprisingly low profile for a moon phase automatic piece. It's only 12.2. So The double dome sapphire crystal is aesthetically pleasing. They could have reduced the thickness further by using a flat sapphire crystal, but at only 12.2 it's not necessary. I like the 3D effect of the dial, which has a textured finish. Nice attention to detail because the circle at the 6 o'clock position has a silver ring which catches the light. Has a nice 3D effect to the moon as well. Early versions of the Agelocer moon phase piece just had a silver moon, but this is inlaid with BGW9 Super Lume Nova, which we'll test in the Lume test. And so the early versions of the moon phase, the moon was dark. In the dark you couldn't see it. This one does glow in the dark, so it's more aesthetically pleasing. The silver minute ticks on the rail track chapter ring are 3D effects and very aesthetically pleasing. On either side of the 6 o'clock index we have moon phase in silver, which complements the silver applied Agelocer original logo at 6 o'clock. So textured dial has a nice 3D effect, nice depth to it, but it's not too far away from the underside of the double dome sapphire crystal because there is a very low profile stainless steel retort. So the sapphire crystal sits close to the cannon pinion and the syringe handset, therefore the legibility is good, the readability of the dial is good, and I like the symmetry of it with the absence of a date complication. So nice clean dial, it's not over branded with unnecessary text or specification. Often low tier Chinese brands have a tendency to print too much text on the dial, such as the water resistance rating or automatic. This is negligible information for a daily wear piece, it's not a dive piece. So I like that it just says Agelocer original and either side of the 6 o'clock index moon phase, just the right amount of information. So the chapter ring has a step to it, as does the 6 o'clock circle on the dial, and the moon phase rotates around inside the 3D chapter ring, and I like the 3D effect to it. It does add interest to it. Nice green textured dial, the dial execution, the quality of the mirror polishing to the arrowhead tip applied indices is very good. So the mirror polishing to the indices and the mirror polishing to the syringe hands is very good. Also want to give credit to Agelocer Original here, because if you look at the proportions of the hands, often Chinese low-tier brands have a tendency to make the hands too short and under proportion. But if you look at the large silver mirror polished syringe hand for the minute hand, the tip of the syringe hand extends all the way to the minute ticks on the chapter ring, as it should do. The hour hand also looks correctly proportioned and it looks very good. The legibility is good. I like the faceted profile. They're not flat syringe hands, they have facets and they catch the light, so the mirror polishing is very good, the proportions is good. So with regards to the bezel, it's solid 316L grade stainless steel, mirror polished, flat profile rather than domed profile, nice mirror polished chamfer on the edge of it, so there's no sharp edge to the top edge of the stainless steel bezel. It's low profile and that allows the low profile double dome sapphire crystal to project slightly above it. So the edge of the double dome sapphire crystal has a bevel on it that catches the light. It's very good looking. With regards to the finishing to the head of the piece, solid 316L grade stainless steel case, curved profile to the tops of the lugs, which is brushed satin finish to a good standard, beautiful luster, and that complements the longitudinal brushed satin finishing, which has a nice fine grained finish to the satin finishing, beautiful luster to it on the left hand flank and also the right hand flank on the crown guard side. So the quality of the mirror polishing is good quality. Nice large bevels which mark the transition between the tops of the curved lugs and the flanks to the case. They have nice mirror polishing. Tips of the 4 lugs are deburred and chamfered very well, so it doesn't have any sharp corners to the case. The undercuts to the flanks have been deburred and chamfered very well, so no sharp edges to the case. Also internally in between the lugs are vertically brushed satin finish, which adds some interest. They catch the light very well. Beautiful luster to the vertical brushed satin finishing inside the lugs, and that contrasts with the longitudinal brushed satin finishing. So beautiful luster to it. Very nice mirror polishing. The mirror polishing to the bevels complements the mirror polishing to the chamfer and the top edge of the bezel. So good looking case. I like that it's only 12.2mm thick, and also the curved lugs curve around the wrist very well. So let's test the moon phase complication and let's look at the push-pull crown execution. Solid 316L grade stainless steel crown, coin edge finished, nice chamfer to the tips of the teeth so they don't feel sharp. They've been deburred very well. It's correctly proportioned. It's a low profile coin edge crown, but it is large enough to get good purchase with your index finger and thumb to manually wind it and also set the time and the moon phase complication. Mirror polished domed cap embossed with the Agelocer Original emblem to a good standard, so I'm pleased to see it's not a sterile crown. They haven't used the cost cutting measure of making it sterile. It's signed with an embossed emblem to a good standard. So as it's a push pull crown, in the closed position you can manually wind the caliber A4610 automatic to its maximum 80-hour power reserve. 80 hours is very impressive. That's something to bear in mind. So, very high power reserve. Now, it doesn't feel smooth to manually wind. It doesn't feel rough or gritty, but there is a lot of friction in it. You can feel that this is heavily sprung loaded. It does have a large mainspring, which one has to expect because it does have an 80-hour power reserve, which is double the amount of typical power reserves of automatics. Automatics often have 40 hours of power reserve, therefore it does need a large mainspring. So you can really feel the tension building up. It feels very stiff to manually wind. Now, it doesn't feel rough or gritty. It feels smooth, but you can really feel the tension in the spring. It's got a very strong spring in it to provide 80 hours of power reserve, double the power reserve of normal automatics. So you have to really rotate the crown with a lot of torsion in order to get it to manually wind. Does wind well, does work well, but you can really feel the tension. So it feels stiff. It's not a light action to manually winding it. For example, it feels a lot heavier than a Seiko NH35A automatic, which you'll all be familiar with. So, pulling it out to the first click position is the moon phase complication. So, the moon phase is, the full cycle of it is 29.51 days exactly, and it doesn't feel smooth cycling through the 29.51 days. Each click has a positive click for each of the phases of the moon, rather like a date complication. So when you rotate the moon phase complication, it feels like setting the date. In terms of sensation, it feels very similar to setting the date on a Seiko NH35A. It's got that characteristic heavy clicking feeling to the indexing of the moon phase. So it feels just like setting the date on an NH35A. Alternatively, it feels like setting the GMT hour hand on a Seiko NH34A, which you'll all be familiar with. The hour hand clicks with a nice positive click on the GMT hour hand on the NH34A. That's the feeling of the moon phase. It doesn't feel smooth. It doesn't just cycle through smoothly through the 29.51 days of the moon phase cycle. It's got a heavy click. So indexing is good and solid, feels robust. Now I'm not going to detail all the different phases because there's a plethora of moon phases and it would take a very long time to talk through all of them. But the two ones to note, when it's at 12 o'clock position on the dial, that is the full moon. When it's at the 6 o'clock position, that is the new moon. So it cycles from the new moon at 6 all the way round the dial to the 12 o'clock position, which is the full moon, as one would expect. And all of these different moon phases have specific names, but as I've detailed, there's too many to go through in the length of this video. Indexing works well, the alignment as well. If you look at the circle silver disc of the moon, you can see it's perfectly central. It's aligned centrally on the dial at the 12 o'clock index on the dial and the 60-minute tick on the rail track chapter ring. So indexing works well. The only negative to it is you have to rotate the crown clockwise and it clicks all the way around the phases. But, for example, if you accidentally go too far to the next phase, you can't rotate the crown anti-clockwise to bring it back a click to the previous phase. So you can't rotate the crown and rotate the moon phase anti-clockwise around the dial. It is unidirectional. You can only rotate the moon phase through the cycle of the 29.51 days clockwise only. So that's something to bear in mind. You have to be careful when you're setting it not to go too far because the clicks are quite light, so it's easy to click one click too far. So you just need to rotate the crown slightly, not too much, when you're setting the moon phase. Pulling it out to the second click position is the final click. We're now in the time setting position and that hacks the movement. So it's possible to hack the caliber A4610 automatic, but we can't tell that it's hacked looking at the front because there's no second hand. I would prefer this if it had a second hand because then you could set the time precisely to the second, but as I've detailed, this is subjective. Some collectors like moon phase pieces to lack a second hand just to have the clean dial with just two syringe hands. So it feels smooth clockwise and anti-clockwise to set the time, minimal friction in the gearing. And it feels the same, both clockwise and anti-clockwise. One thing I like about it is the lack of backplay. You don't have to take up a lot of slack in the movement. So there's an almost immediate response. When you rotate the crown clockwise and anti-clockwise, the minute hand, the tip of the syringe minute hand, moves quickly. So you don't need to take up a lot of slack. The gearing feels nice and tight, although it does have a light action to it. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement. So it does have hacking, although you can't see it. And the benefit of it being a push-pull crown with 50 meters rather than a screw-down crown is you don't need to unscrew it in order to set the moon phase and also manually wind it. It does take a lot of turns to get it to its full 80 hours. So to put it into perspective, often with automatics, for example, the NH35A has a 41-hour power reserve. When it's stopped dead, when the mainspring is fully exhausted, 40 clockwise turns is enough to fully wind a 40-hour power reserve movement. So for example, a Seiko NH35A with 41 hours, if the movement's dead, if the mainspring is completely exhausted, you can manually wind an NH35A 40 times. That will make it fully wound to its maximum 41-hour power reserve. This has 80 hours. It has a large mainspring. So in order to fully wind it, you have to give it double the amount of turns that you would normally with a 40-hour power reserve. You need to rotate this 80 times. But once it's wound, 80 hours is an incredibly long power reserve. Of course, you can also wear it for 8 to 12 hours per day because it's an automatic and you can wind it with a bidirectional rotor. So push-pull crown is 50 meters. 50 meters is acceptable specification for a daily wear piece. It doesn't need 100 meters and it doesn't need a screw-down crown. As I've detailed, the benefit of it being 50 rather than 100 is it has a thinner double dome sapphire crystal and a thinner exhibition caseback. That reduces the piece down to 12.2. It's not 13mm plus and top heavy. So let's look at the strap in detail. So this is made from genuine leather, bamboo textured finish to it, suede on the top side, and the liner, which is contrasting orange coloured, is genuine leather but smooth, not suede. Curved end to it, so it's got curved spring bars. That closes up the gap between the case and also the strap. They could have used straight spring bars and that would have had a larger gap, so it does look better with the curved end to the strap and the curved spring bars. Nice snug fit between the spring bars and also the case. Very soft and supple. It's a padded strap, so very thick at the spring bar end. It tapers down in thickness down to the buckle and tang, but it's surprisingly soft and supple, even for a thick padded suede strap. Very soft and supple at the buckle and tang. This will fit from a 6-inch wrist up to a maximum 7.5, which I'll show you in the wrist shots. But this feels surprisingly supple for a padded strap. In terms of how supple it feels very similar to a flexible silicone rubber strap. That is how soft and supple it is. It's not going to require any breaking in whatsoever. So surprising. Usually with genuine leather straps that are padded, they're very thick and they take a lot of daily wear to break them in and become very comfortable. But this one feels immediately soft and supple, rather like a strap that's years old that you've worn for days and broken in. So it's very good. 2 keepers on the strap, one slides, one's fixed as one would expect. They're correctly proportioned and also suede. Now the underside is lined with contrasting orange genuine leather. Very smooth, very comfortable to wear. Plenty of holes to adjust from a 6-inch minimum to a maximum 7.5-inch wrist, and good attention to detail because it's embossed with the Agelocer original emblem. Good quality stitching around the top side and the underside of the perimeter, and I'm pleased to see quick release stainless steel spring bars. So these are curved spring bars rather than straight, and as you can see there's a minimal gap between the end of the curved strap and also the curved profile of the case. This is good. I prefer to see curved spring bars and the curved end to a strap because it's got a nice minimal gap, as you can see. Rather than using straight spring bars and having a large gap, this looks more aesthetically pleasing. Also, they've made the correct decision by using quick release spring bars because that negates the need for a spring bar tool if you want to remove the strap and exchange it. With mirror polished cases like this, it's sometimes difficult to get a spring bar tool in between the edge of the padded thick leather strap and in between the lugs because there's a risk of slipping and scuffing and scratching the mirror polishing on the lugs. It's hard to compress a thick strap because of the thickness of it. So by using quick release spring bars, you can simply use the quick release lever. You don't need a spring bar tool. So it's good they didn't use standard spring bars. On the other end, it's embossed with Agelocer original to a good standard. So quality of the strap is very good. It's very soft and supple. So let's look at the exhibition caseback. This provides an effective hermetic seal to 50 meters. 50 meters is perfectly acceptable for a daily wear piece. It doesn't need 100 meters. The benefit of it being 50 rather than 100 is the sapphire crystal is very thin, very close to the rotor. And look how flat and low profile it is. This is not a bubble back profile to the caseback. They deserve credit. Quality is very good. Mirror polishing around the circumference to the stainless steel portion is flawless. The milled slots are deburred and chamfered very well. High definition engraving of the specification around the circumference, and it is very well finished. Nice large portion to the sapphire glazing. Now they deserve credit here because they could have used the cost-cutting measure of glazing it with mineral crystal. Strictly speaking, an exhibition caseback doesn't need to be glazed with sapphire crystal. The front of the piece is prone to being scuffed and scratched with wear and tear. So yes, the front of the piece needs sapphire crystal. But the exhibition caseback is just going to be rubbing against your wrist, therefore it's not going to become scuffed and scratched easily. Usually, low-tier Chinese brands will use the cost-cutting measure of mineral crystal, which is less expensive. But this is glazed with sapphire crystal on the front and sapphire crystal on the back. No cost-cutting, which is very good. A credit to Agelocer Original. So, exhibition caseback does a good job of displaying the movements, and it is very aesthetically pleasing. I like that it's low profile and 50 meters because this is only 12.2. I would expect it to be in excess of 13 millimeters. Bearing in mind it is an automatic with a moon phase complication. So I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now, as I've detailed, this suede strap will fit a 6-inch wrist up to a maximum 7.5. I can do it up and I could just engage the end of the strap in the first of the two keepers, but it's a fraction too short. So in order to fit an 8-inch wrist, this would need to be half an inch longer. But I'm not going to be critical of it because for the majority of collectors with a 6 to 7.5 inch wrist, this strap will suffice. There is enough length on it to engage the end of the strap in the keepers. So 6 to 7.5 inch wrist, it will fit. Plenty of holes for a 6 to 7.5 inch wrist. The taper is correct, 20 down to the buckle and tang. Now, the thing I like about this piece is the lack of heft. It is surprisingly lightweight. Bear in mind it has a sapphire crystal glazed exhibition case back, which does add some heft to it, and it is a 40mm. This is only 77 grams on the suede strap. So 40mm does give wrist presence, but it is only 12.2 thick. As you'll know from my previous reviews, 13mm or below is the sweet spot for a piece to easily slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts. So this is a practical daily wear piece at only 12.2. It's surprisingly low profile, bearing in mind it has an exhibition case back. Wrist presence is good, feel good factor is good, comfort level is 10 out of 10. The flat sapphire crystal glazing in the exhibition caseback feels very flat and smooth against the wrist, and it's very low profile. Minimal gap beneath the tips of the lugs, and the curved lugs curve around the wrist very well, so it doesn't sit on top of the wrist like a slab of 316L grade stainless steel. It wraps around the wrist very well. It's got a 47mm lug-to-lug measurement, which is 1mm below the sweet spot. 48mm is the perfect sweet spot, regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist or a 7 to 8 inch wrist, respectively. So at 47 lug-to-lug, it is 1mm below the perfect sweet spot. Needless to say, this will fit you regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist or a larger 7 to 8 inch wrist. 47 is good. So proportions are good. 40mm gives wrist presence, doesn't feel too tall or top heavy because it's only 12.2, will easily slip underneath a shirt cuff. 47 is only 1mm below the perfect sweet spot of 48. 20mm is the correct lug width for a 40mm head of the piece. So the strap looks the correct size for a 40mm. Nice taper on it. The suede effect has a nice matte finish, so it's not glossy and shiny as per a dress piece, so it does fit the aesthetic of this being a daily wear piece. Nice bamboo textured finish to it, and quality of the strap is very good. Very comfortable because it's very soft and supple, and as I've detailed, I like that it's curved end with curved spring bars rather than straight end because that closes up the gap between the spring bars and the case. Nice curved profile to it, and also like the large mirror polished bevels which mark the transition of the tops of the lug. So the mirror polished bezel catches the light. Nice 3D effect to the dial, the moon phase looks good, and also the silver mirror polished syringe handset are very aesthetically pleasing. So good looking piece, comfort level is good, feel good factor is good, feels very lightweight, feels invisible on wrist. 77 grams is very lightweight for an automatic 40mm piece on a leather strap. I would expect this to be circa 90 grams in the 40mm size. 47 is deceptively light. So good looking, also very comfortable. Feel good factor is good. Right, so let's do a lume test because as I've detailed, the original Agelocer original moon phase just had a silver disc for the moon, which was 3D and textured, but it didn't have any superluminova. So in the dark you could not see the moon phase complications. So firstly, just bear with me, I'm going to cycle through the full cycle of the moon phase because I want to get it back up to 12 o'clock, which is the full moon, and then you'll be able to see the moon in its full glory. Just bear with me. takes a while to cycle through. One more click. Right, so now we're at the full moon, and I'll move these syringe hands out of the way. Right, so now you'll see the full moon when we do the Lume test. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged. Now as you can see, there's no Lume on the applied indices, and we don't have Lume on the syringe handset, which is acceptable because this is a daily wear piece. But they have fully lumed the moon phase complication. The moon is fully lumed with BGW9 superluminova. And I want to give due credit because they've clearly applied 5 to 6 layers. The exciter in the BGW9 is glowing incredibly brightly, so they haven't used the cost-cutting measure of 3 to 4 layers. This does add some interest to the piece because, as I've detailed, the early versions of the Agelocer original moon phase just had a silver disc, which was 3D effect. It was textured like the moon, but it was very shiny and reflective. But it looked low quality like tinfoil. But this one looks higher quality. The definition of the 3D effect to the silver moon looks aesthetically pleasing. It looks good quality. But the addition of the BGW9 in daylight makes it look white as per the moon. So it does look good. In the dark, you can see we have the shadow on the moon with a silver portion, but also the BGW9 glowing in blue. So the benefit of this is you can actually see it. So I'm just going to cycle it through so you get an impression of how it will look in the different moon phases in the dark. I think it adds some interest to it. I think adding the BGW9 superluminova has enhanced the piece because previously it did really look like a disc of tinfoil stuck on the dial, and this 3D effect moon looks better. The legibility, of course, is good because in the dark you can see it, whereas previously you couldn't because it was just a silver disc on the early versions of the moon phase. So cycles through the 29.51 days in the various phases and works very well. So legibility is good if you want to look at the moon in the dark. It does add some interest. It makes it more aesthetically pleasing, and I think it looks better than just having a silver disc, which is 3D effect and textured as per the moon. I like it. I think they've done a good job of it. Right, so let's discuss the movement used because it is my favourite aspect of the piece. So sapphire crystal does a good job of displaying it. This is powered by the Agelocer Calibre A4610 automatic, which is a moon phase complication piece. It has 27 joules, it runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 4 Hz. It has hand winding and hacking, which I've demonstrated work very well, but the thing to note is you do have to hand wind it several times more than a 40-hour power reserve piece because this has 80 hours. It has a large mainspring, therefore you can't fully wind it with 40 clockwise turns as per a 40-hour automatic. You have to rotate it a high number of turns, 80 hours to fully wind it. But of course, it's got a bidirectional winding rotor, which is skeletonized. That also can wind the movement to its maximum 80 hours if you wear the piece for 8 to 12 hours per day. Now, this piece is powered by the Calibre A4610, which is actually based upon the Hangzhou Calibre 7200A. So the architecture of this movement with the moon phase complication is the same as the architecture of the Hangzhou Calibre 7200A, but it has a moon phase complication added to it by Agelocer. And Agelocer then call it the A4610 automatic. So 28,800 vibrations per hour, frequency of 4 Hz, hand winding and hacking, 80-hour power reserve is very high. Stated accuracy is -10 to +20 seconds per day, so rather wide accuracy range. However, I'm pleased to report that Agelocer Original are doing a good job of regulating the movements they're using. This one is running consistently at +10, so +10 is well within the stated -10 to +20 per day. +10 isn't a very accurate reading, but one has to be realistic. This has a very high power reserve of 80 hours. So to put this into perspective, one has to strike a balance between power reserve and accuracy. When you increase the power reserve, for example, from 40 to 60 to 80 hours, you have to sacrifice accuracy. The higher the power reserve, the lower the accuracy. If you lower the power reserve, you can refine the accuracy. So a 40-hour movement can be regulated to chronometer grade accuracy of -4 to +6, for example. When you have a 60 or 80-hour power reserve, you increase the power reserve, but you have to sacrifice accuracy. So this is -10 to +20 as a result. Plus 10 is good enough for an 80-hour power reserve, so I'm not going to be critical of it. In terms of finishing, it's very well finished. Skeletonized rotor is engraved with high definition engraving and inlaid with gilt. Also, we have the Agelocer original emblem inlaid with gilt. The rotor is concentric CNC lathe tool machined, nicely mirror polished with the cutouts in the skeletonized rotor. Milled circles on the bridges are also engraved and inlaid with gilt to a good standard. I like the way the milled circles catch the light. And on the lower main plates we also have pelage finishing, which is nice decoration. There are no blued screws, but I like to see the gilt engraving, as you can see. Very aesthetically pleasing, complements the gilt engraving to the skeletonized rotor. Pelage finishing is nice, and the milled circles are also nice on the main bridge. So it's a very aesthetically pleasing movement to look at, and 88 hours is very impressive. 80 hours is very impressive power reserve. So good looking, nice to see the sapphire crystal exhibition caseback displaying it. The thing I like about it is low profile for an automatic with a moon phase complication, and the benefit of that is this piece is only 12.7 as a result. It's not 13mm plus as one would expect. So movement is reliable, it's well proven. It's a workhorse caliber made in China. So the Hangzhou 7200A, which this is based upon, is reliable. 80 hours of power reserve is well proven. Accuracy is well proven as well at -10 to +20. The only thing I would say is it doesn't feel very smooth to manually wind. Because of the large mainspring with 80 hours, it does feel very heavily sprung loaded. So you've really got to turn the crown, as I detailed when I manually wound it. It doesn't feel as light and smooth as manually winding a 40-hour piece with a lighter mainspring. So it's got a very heavy spring-loaded action. You've really got to turn the crown, and of course that's quite tiring because you've got to rotate it 88 times versus 40 to fully manually wind it to 80 hours. But that's something you just have to become accustomed to and live with. There's only one negative to it I want you to be aware of. It has a noisy rotor. Now, the rotor is bidirectional, which is good because it winds both clockwise and anti-clockwise. It doesn't matter which direction the rotor spins in, it has the same winding effect. It's not a unidirectional winding movement. But when the rotor spins round, it makes a loud audible sound. So to put it into perspective, it sounds similar to the noise a Miyota caliber 8215 makes. Miyota 8000 series movements are known for having a noisy rotor. The 9000 series, such as the 9015, are quieter. They're more refined. This does have the same loud rotor. You can hear it when it spins round, both clockwise and anti-clockwise. Now, it spins round freely, both clockwise and anti-clockwise, but you can hear it. So, similar sound to the Miyota 8215, for example. It sounds louder than a Seiko NH35A, which you'll all be familiar with. That's something to bear in mind. Now, when it's on wrist, you can hear the rotor moving around. Something to bear in mind if you like a quiet movement. But that's the only negative. Everything else about it is good. The build quality, quality control, reliability, tolerances, the manual winding works okay, and the hacking works okay. And it does feel good to set the time and set the moon phase complications. So it works very well. So last I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch meets two criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So, low tier piece, the price point is €476. I'm going to declare it good quality, but I'm going to declare the value as okay. I'm not going to say it's good value and I'm not going to say excellent value, because at €476 in the low tier, this does face some stiff competition from other Chinese low tier brands. I think Agelocer Original need to lower the price below €476 to make it more competitive and to improve the value to good or excellent. The value is okay, but I think at €476 it is expensive for a moon phase complication automatic piece. But having said that, the quality control, builds quality and finishing are good throughout, so therefore it's good quality but only okay value. I'm going to recommend it to you for consideration. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Agelocer 29.51 day moon phase. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.